Hello and welcome back to This Day in History. It is August 23rd, 2024, and as you know, it's not about the year, it's about the magic of the day. Um, Speaking of today, it's gloomy, it's cloudy. Like, it rained yesterday, and, it rained pretty much throughout the day, and now it just kind of it's cooler temperatures. You'd almost think that it was fall already, but yet not even September yet, so, uh, craziness. All right, we have a few birthdays. In fact, I think only one of these birthdays might actually still be alive. Um, as far as history, we have alliances, we have syndromes created, we have unexpected deaths, and um, and a famous execution. Some other stuff. So let's get into it. So, birthdays. All right, so we start out in 1769. It's French. And mind you, I don't know French very well. And the American in me wants to just pronounce this Georges. Georges Colvier. But I think it's a Georges Cuvier. He was a French zoologist. Yeah, I got nothing. 1849, we see the birth of William Ernest Henley. He was an English poet, critic, and editor. The one thing about Henley is, if I remember right and I read right, he was chiefly responsible for a lot of other literary artists of the day being brought to prominence. Because he was an editor, he was able to bring them, into the limelight, if it's the same guy I'm thinking of. 1912, Gene Kelly, American actor, dancer, director, was born on this day. 1926, Clifford Geertz, an American anthropologist, was born on this day. 1951, the Queen of Jordan, Queen Noor, she possibly could still be alive. I mean, I have an uncle that was born in 51 and he's still kicking. So 1978, we see the birth of NBA All-Star Kobe Bryant, who was killed in a helicopter accident crash several years ago with his daughter, I believe. Pretty tragic event. He was an LA Laker. He was very good. He was, I wouldn't say he was one of the greatest, but I mean, he was one of the best ones out there. He had he was effective on the court with Shaquille O'Neal. Years and years ago, there was a rape allegation in Colorado. It basically got dismissed. One of the reasons was credibility of the victim. By all accounts, she went to his hotel room. So it was one of those things where it was widely believed that she went to the hotel room. She was a hotel worker. She went to his room after she clocked off to go have some fun with him, and then turned around and claimed rape. That's not saying that's what happened. I'm saying that's how that was the case that was presented, and that's what led to his acquittal. And there was enough compelling evidence to, for the jury to believe that he was not guilty of rape. I'll just leave it at that. And that's the birthdays. So let's go back into this day in history. Our featured event is like way earlier, but I'm saving it for last. 1514, the Ottomans won a decisive victory over the Safavids of Iran At the Battle of Chaldiran. Um, I'm not sure where this battle took place. I mean, I know it says Battle of Chaldiran, but I don't know where that is. But I'm I'm suspecting this is when the Ottomans are really starting to establish themselves as a major empire, as a force to be reckoned with. The Ottomans ended up taking what is present day Middle East, from Turkey on down to um, the Arabian Peninsula. They may have gone as far as Iraq and Iran, and then they had a westward push into um, the Balkans and all the like, and then that's when they kind of started to um, really vie for power. And I'm not sure if that was about the same time as the Moorish invasion of Europe, but I mean they definitely were of like-minded uh, Muslims that were trying to encroach into Europe, um, and the Muslims did take part of Europe for a time. I mean, there's huge. They went through Spain for one, and then they went through Albania, uh, Macedonia, all that eastern uh, Europe east of Italy, and that the whole Slavic area of Europe is where they tried to take a push. They pushed in, the Ottomans anyway, pushed in from that direction. Um, the other Moors, they pushed in through um, Spain, and had taken, and had held, part of Spain for a good long while. Um, Southern Spain, Eastern Spain. Charlemagne, who eventually became known as a Roman emperor, became I believe, the first king of France. He's the one who actually pushed them out, pushed the Moors out of getting further in Europe. Certainly kicked them out of the the French territory, and I believe he kicked them out of most of the Spanish territory as well. But the Ottomans won a decisive victory on this day in 1514, which led to their expansion in. I guess they would call that area Eurasia. Um, so yeah, 1926. The Great Lover. That's a movie. Motion picture actor Rudolph Valentino. He died suddenly at the age of 31. Young guy, prompted widespread panic grief from his fans. Didn't say why he died. It just said that it was all of a sudden and such a young age. Even even in by that even in that time and day, that time period, 1920s, 31 was still fairly young. 1927, this is a year later, and I believe we talked about this. It might have been them being convicted or whatnot, or one of them had a birthday. I can't remember, but I do recall us talking about this one. The Italian immigrants, Nicola Sacco and uh, Bartolomeo Vanzetti, they were executed on this day in 1927. Here, my grandfather was born. They were executed for murder in Massachusetts, despite a mishandled trial and widespread belief that they were innocent. So, um, if I'm reading between the lines, I'm guessing that they were immigrants. They probably lacked an understanding of our culture, probably didn't speak the language very well, and it was probably real easy to pin these murders on these two and make scapegoats out of them. And so, unfortunately, they were executed for it. Not saying that's what happened, but I mean, that's, if I'm reading between the lines, it's kind of what's implied. Yesterday we talked about Frank Bruno Hauptmann, because it was Norman Schwarzkopf's birthday, and Norman said in his book about how he had so much overwhelming evidence that his dad had at home, because his dad being superintendent of the state police for New Jersey. Um, who oversaw the Lindbergh kidnapping, he had so much evidence that never made it into court that really pointed the finger at Frank Bruno Hauptmann. And my only thing to that is like, well, why wasn't it introduced into court? If evidence isn't introduced, it's usually because it's not viable, or it's not, there's not enough weight behind it to actually really, so they withhold. Or the defense probably could have poked a big hole in it, and it was not evidence at all. So, you got to think about it from that point of view. Just derailing a moment, that case, the Hauptmann case, was so circumstantial. It's like by today's standards, I don't know that they could have got a conviction by today's standards, because it was so circumstantial. And he protested hard when he was on the stand. He told them that, it was nonsense. It was BS. It was, you're picking on me because I'm a German immigrant and I'm not the guy that did it. The guy that did it, he got away. Here's his name. Yes, I knew this guy. Yes, I got some of the money, but that's what I'm guilty of. I did not, commit this crime, blah, blah, blah. And what it was, and it came down to, it's like he was the only one that they could convict, and that's probably why he was convicted. But should Hauptmann have got the death penalty? I don't know about that. But, they should have tried him as an accomplice at the very least, and, given him, an appropriate sentence. But because a baby was killed, a 2-year-old was killed, someone had to pay. So I'm kind of wondering if maybe that's the case here. Where it's like, well, we need someone to be held accountable for these murders, and these guys are it. So that's kind of what I'm reading between the lines. On this day in 1939, we talk about, from time to time, we talk about, the Russians and the Germans and their spheres of influence. And it is on this day that Germany and the Soviet Union, they signed that non-aggression pact. Where it's like, you leave me alone, I leave you alone. I'm going to do my thing over here, you're going to do your thing over there. And basically the biggest threat to Hitler was Stalin. And so he wanted to make Stalin his ally. So while he was going to go do his campaigning in Western Europe and expand in Western Europe, while he was going to, poke the nose of the British and the French and all that, he really didn't want Russia coming to their aid, right? So they have this non-aggression pact, they sign it, right? And it's great, right? So Russia leaves Germany alone, lets them do their thing, lets them invade Poland in September of 1939, lets them invade France and the Netherlands, and have that alliance with Italy, right? He didn't roll into Spain because he wanted Spain to stay neutral, but Spain was loyal to him. So, he had a partner in Spain. So he pretty much had Europe pretty well sewed up. All he had to do was just leave Stalin alone. Well, it would be the winter of 1941 where he would go back on that non-aggression pact, and he would, he'd go bloody Stalin's nose. And then, like an idiot, like he should have figured from when he fought in World War I, the foolishness of fighting a two-front war. When you're in you're a dead center. You're in the center of Europe, right? And you're fighting people to the west, and now you've just went and picked a fight to the guys to the east. What's going to happen there? Well, what's going to happen is, the biggest guy that you feared on the yard is going to mud stomp you. And that's exactly what happened. And, World War II was when Hitler invaded Russia and broke the non-aggression pact, he sealed his fate. And at that point, it was just a matter of time between the Allies coming in from this direction and then the Soviets coming in from this direction. And then they squeezed them. In fact, the Allies let the Russians go take Berlin, because of all the horrible atrocities and brutality that Germans had inflicted on the citizens and the people. I mean, a lot of people died. Stalingrad, a million people died in Stalingrad. So, the Russians were looking for a little bit of payback. The Germans, on the other hand, would have rather have had Patton roll in, because they knew that if they could have surrendered to the Americans, right, they'd be taken care of, they'd be treated well, and they feared the Russians, and Patton was willing to do that, but Allied command wanted to throw the Russians a bone, so they let them take it, much to Patton's chagrin, and that was that. So we fast forward to 1973. A botched bank robbery in Stockholm results in a hostage situation. Now, over the course of the 6-day standoff, captives formed this really strange, unlikely bond with their captors. And it gave rise to what we now know as Stockholm Syndrome. And Stockholm Syndrome is basically that like someone who is held captive over time develops this really weird loyalty, fascination, a familiarity, I suppose, with their captors, to the point where it's like, if they tell you to do something, they're willing to go along with it. If they tell you, if they are harmed in any way, in like if law enforcement comes in, the captives tend to become the protectors of the captors, if that makes any sense. It's a really weird situation, but it's all psychological, hoopla that is caused by. I'm no psychologist, but there's a breakdown in the human psyche, and when you're held hostage, held captive, normal sensibilities just kind of goes out the window, I suppose. In 2000, the first season of the U.S. version of the reality TV show Survivor ends. Richard Hatch, not the Richard Hatch that played Apollo in Battlestar Galactica, the other Richard Hatch, he was announced the winner of the popular series was credited with launching that style of reality TV, that fad, in the early 20th century. I actually don't like reality TV. I find it dull. I find it boring. And we have to thank MTV for that, because the reality is the TV show The Real World. And I used to watch it when I was in high school. I mean, it came out the year I graduated, 1993. That really started the trend of reality TV. Now you're just so inundated with reality TV, whether it's America's Got Talent, America's Idol, or, Survivor, Naked and Afraid, all these various different, it's like, the Kardashians, for instance, if I want to experience real life, I'm going to go out in the real world and just experience it. I don't need to watch a TV show. It's just, dumb. 2011. In 2011, on this day, after rebel forces captured his compound in Tripoli, Muammar Gaddafi, his 4 decades of rule in Libya came to an end. Although his whereabouts were initially unknown, he was discovered 2 months later in the Libyan city of Sirte and killed. So, like, I remember the issues with Gaddafi in the 80s. I remember in 1985 when we sent a couple of F-15s into Tripoli, bombed the crap out of him, because he was a sponsor of terrorism. And while he himself may not have engaged in the terrorism, he certainly let terrorists come into his backyard and whatever. He let them train. He let them do whatever. He gave them money. He would support their causes. And he kept screwing with the United States. He kept screwing with our interests. And so we sent him a very veiled message. Not so veiled message. It was in the form of an F-15 airstrike. And one of his sons, I think, was killed in that strike. And we almost got him. almost. But that had sent a very strong message to Muammar Gaddafi of like, you don't mess with us. And he didn't. In fact, he actually called Saddam Hussein and said, I know these people. Don't mess with them. And Saddam's like, yeah, I got this. So he had been very critical. His big thing is like, if you understood the political climate at the time in 2010, 2009, 10, 11 there. So the Muslim Brotherhood was really sweeping across northern Africa. They'd taken Egypt, they had taken Tunisia. Libya was in the way. And he was not in line with the Muslim Brotherhood at all. And so clearly they wanted to take him out. So who were these rebels? I love how, that says that they're rebels. Well, it was Al-Qaeda. Okay. We know that it was Al-Qaeda because that's what Benghazi was about. All right. I'm going to go off on a little bit of tangent here because it still kind of fires me up. Benghazi was September 11, 2011. That was where we had 4 Americans killed. One of them being from my hometown, Tyrone Woods, the Navy SEAL that was killed. He was from my hometown. Their job there was basically to illegally supply arms to Al-Qaeda so that Al-Qaeda would take Muammar Gaddafi out. That's right. The Obama administration did this without consent of Congress. This is why they covered it up. This is why they said, this attack on the U.S. embassy, which really wasn't an embassy. If it were a proper embassy, it would have had more protection than it did. They covered it up and said, this attack was based off of a video that offended the Muslim world. No, it wasn't. You were giving guns to our enemies that we're fighting over in Afghanistan and Iraq, so that you could appease them and have them take out Gaddafi because he's standing in the way of your buddies. All right. It's alleged that Obama was real good friends with the Muslim Brotherhood, and that so he did them a solid by having Gaddafi taken out. Thing is, Gaddafi, as bad of a person as he was, Gaddafi actually kept the region kind of somewhat, in check. So I don't know that it was actually a good thing that Gaddafi was taken out. It really led to a power vacuum again, and this is what Obama will be known for in his, throughout the lens of history, is that he's known for creating power vacuums. And I think he was a bad president, and I didn't like him. I didn't vote for him either time. And I can't vote for, and I wasn't going to vote for Hillary Clinton, who was Secretary of State at the time. And when grilled about the whole Benghazi thing, her response was, what difference did it make? Bitch, it made a big difference to us. It made a big difference to me, right? You let one of my fellow hometown heroes hang to dry. You left him out there to die for no reason. You guys had 13 hours to get them out of there, and you could have had them sign NDAs for fear of federal prison time, whatever, and they had to keep their mouths shut, and no one would have known about your illegal arms running. Nobody, right? Not one of those people had to die that day to cover your ass. So no, I have no love for the Obama administration. I have no love for Hillary Clinton. You talk about evil people, that's evil right there, is sending someone to do your bidding and then letting them hang out to dry so that you don't get caught. No. Go to hell. Sorry, that just fires me up. And his death was, it said 2 months later, Gaddafi was killed. Well, Gaddafi was killed right around 9/11. 2011. It was it was part of the whole. I can't remember if he was killed after, within a couple days after or before or whatever. But I mean, it was not a good situation. And and if you think I'm just blowing up propaganda, go talk to the folks that survived. You know, go talk to those other operators that survived. This is their story. I'm relaying what they said, right? The reason why they were there, the reason, they did what they did, right? The real reason why that embassy was attacked and Chris Stevens was killed was because, you know, this bullshit nonsense. Last thing, featured event. The year is 1305. William Wallace is executed. Who is William Wallace? Go watch the movie Braveheart. I mean, it's not a true biopic. It is Hollywood fluff, but it gives you just a little bit of information on who the man was. He was fighting for Scottish independence. He was fighting against Edward I, who Longshanks. He, he wanted to fight to reunite Scotland and to give them their prominence, and eventually Robert the Bruce would end up becoming King of Scotland. But it is on this day in London, Wallace was executed for treason. He was condemned for leading Scottish resistance forces during the first years of the long and ultimately successful struggle to free Scotland from English rule. He paved the way for Robert the Bruce to become King of Scotland, and for the English to recognize Scottish sovereignty. The movie suggests that Longshanks died before before Wallace was executed. I don't know about that, but I do know that Robert the Bruce had waited for Longshanks to die before he made his move. I mean, I have some friends that are like, no, that's not right. That's not right. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. He actually went into hiding until he got word that Longshanks had died. Longshanks' heir wasn't any kind of great military genius whatsoever, so he was actually kind of a pushover, and so it was deemed then that Robert the Bruce would come back, he'd rally his forces, and then he would ultimately get his victory, and he'd be crowned King of Scotland, because the Longshanks' heir wasn't strong enough to put the Scots in their place. So this is a long video, and I apologize for it being a long video. A lot of it has to do with a tirade, and I humbly apologize for that. I was going to go to the gym. I'm still going to go to the gym. I'm probably just going to go take a shower and then go eat and go to work. But yeah, it is what it is. So that is this day in history for August 23rd. Thanks for tuning in. We'll do it again tomorrow for August 24th. And hopefully we'll have a little bit better weather. I don't know. We'll see. All right. As always, take care, be blessed, and we will talk to you soon. All right.